We want to bring in Caleb Silver. He's Investopedia Editor-In-Chief because he's got a good handle on how people are feeling right now out there. Caleb, it's good to see you. You guys always monitor search terms, what people are doing on your site, and you're also looking at investor anxiety. And this is an interesting one because we keep talking about this aid package, this stimulus bill, and the checks that people are no longer going to be receiving if the thing doesn't get re-upped. How are people feeling out there?
Well, they're not feeling very anxious about the markets, and a 14% return in the S&P 500 after the year that we've had will kind of quell those fears a little bit. But they are feeling anxious about personal finances. We've seen this pattern pretty much for the past 6 months. Capital markets have recovered. The invested class has done well. Those with investments and have stuck with their plan have done well. But their personal finances are getting a little bit shaky under them, some worse than others. So they're worrying about credit. They're worrying about debt. We looked at our top search terms for the year. We saw terms like stimulus, obviously, but forbearance was in there. But market anxiety, that feeling about, is the market going to tumble another 30, 35%? That's pretty much gone. If you look at the Investopedia Anxiety Index on your screen right there, look at those levels. We're down to 2020 lows, which 2020 was pretty high, all things considered. But think about where we've gone, and you could track that against the stock market. It looks very similar. So they're not so worried about where their money is put to work in the market, and they're very bullish about going forward. They think 2021 is going to be robust returns. Some think even 10% plus returns. But they are worried about what's happening inside their homes and their communities and to their neighbors.
Caleb, when I see a chart like that, really, that is helpful stuff. But I look at it as a bearish signal. Perhaps our investors are getting too complacent. Another stat you guys have compiled, 77% of investors expect stocks to deliver more gains over the next 12 months. Do you think investors are just too complacent right now?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at our survey, we've been surveying them all year, and we've been sharing those results on your program. If you look at ours, if you look at the independent investors, the individual investor sentiment, that's very high. If you look at fund manager sentiment, that's very high. All of these, you might say, are contrarian signals. At the same time, Brian and Julie, where are you going to get yield, right? Tina here, in a lot of cases, interest rates are where they are for the next 3 years. Inflation is relatively tame. There's going to be government spending, whether it's this little package or another bigger package when the Biden administration takes office. That's a recipe for stocks to go up. And our readers, and there's lots of them, and individual investors around the world are pretty bullish about the next 12 months. So I think everybody's feeling that way. And usually you're right. When others are fearful, you should be greedy. When others are being greedy like this, it might be a time to be a little bit fearful.
And I wonder too, Caleb, because you look at those various search terms, which we were putting up on the screen just a moment ago, I wonder if that gives you any insight as well into whether people are fully cognizant of the risks out there.
Yeah, great question. It's been a year, a tale of two markets, a tale of two economies, the K-shaped recovery. And if you look at our top search terms this year, that tells you exactly where people's minds are. So obviously, stimulus checks is the #1 search term of the year. I think you could find that across a bunch of different sites, but look at the spike there. But when you have that, and you have stock splits, and you have Marxism as the top 3 search terms of the year on Investopedia, that tells you exactly the kind of year we've had. The stock splits, obviously, Tesla and Apple driving that interest back in August and September, but Marxism was just popping throughout the election, leading into the campaigns, into the election, through the election, and its cousin socialism is always there with it as well. So this was a year wherever the extremes were in full effect, and if you look at what our readers were looking for, it tells you exactly where their hearts and their minds were.
I mean, of course, the extreme irony is there. If you look at the stock market this year, boy, are we a far cry from Marxism or socialism in terms of how the economy is done, and the K-shaped recovery as well wouldn't be happening, right? If indeed socialism and Marxism have happened in this country. But yeah, go figure. People, I guess, were worried about it.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, it's the extremes, but I think it was the political rhetoric too throughout the elections. Those terms and economic theories were thrown around. The Democratic candidates, for sure, certainly when Bernie Sanders was involved, but all the way through the Biden and Harris election. So that's the political cycle bleeding into the Investopedia readership. But I think people were very curious about that. And through the debates, we saw those terms spiking again. But if you look at SPAC and some of these other terms that were popping all year long, it tells you really the kind of year we've had, and what a year.
Caleb, what stocks do people like ahead of the new year?
Yeah, our readers are like that home cooking. They think the best returns are going to come from U.S. markets in 2021, and they're leaning into the sectors and the horses that brought them here. So that's the big tech stocks, large cap tech stocks, healthcare, obviously, some pharma, obviously with the vaccines, cannabis, and even some investors are holding on to those dividend plays. So we have some older readers on the site that are really into their old oil stocks, even though those have had a terrible year, but they like the dividend play there. They're loyal to these stocks. So, but they're leaning heavily into the sectors that were the strongest in 2020, thinking that'll be exactly what happens in 2021. But that's not what's happening inside the markets right now, as you know.
Yes, indeed. All right, Caleb, thank you so much. Caleb Silver, Editor-in-Chief at Investopedia. Always good to talk to you. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. We will be talking to you soon.
Thank you. Happy holidays to you.